Okay, guys, got another video for you today. And today we're going to talk about your right to travel. Okay. This is a court case, Shapiro versus Thompson. All right. And I mean, it's very clearly stated right in the summary holding a federal law that applied to residents of the District of Columbia violated the right to travel. So there was a federal law holding residents to the District of Columbia violated the right to travel. Okay. So, let me just give you a little background on this. There was a woman who was applying for government assistance, like welfare. She was a mother. She was 19 years old and a mother, and she was pregnant with another one. And she was moving from state to state. And because they had these rules about collecting welfare or government assistance, I think they call it, right? Welfare assistance. All right, yeah, that's what they call it, welfare assistance, right? Well, it says right here, they were denying welfare assistance to persons who are residents and meet all other eligibility requirements, except that they have not resided within the jurisdiction for at least a year. Okay, so they had one of the requirements was you had to reside there for a year, and she had all the other eligibility requirements except for that. So they're saying, well, her traveling from place to place should not be infringed upon. But we're going to talk about that. Okay, they're saying, well, she's going to have to suffer for a year before she can get her assistance. Now, me personally, 19-year-old single mother with another one on the way, I think she needs some help. Okay. I mean, yeah, we could talk about the dad and where is he at and all this and stuff, but it is what it is. This the circumstance that she's under. All right. And she does have her right to travel, right? All right. So first off, let's go to here. We're going to look at this part right here. It says the state, since the Constitution guarantees the right of interstate movement, the purpose of deterring the migration of indigents into a state is impermissible and cannot serve to justify the classification created by the 1-year waiting period. So that's that assistance period, right? So because she's allowed to move interstate from state to state, she has the right to do so, right? That they can't make that rule. And moving from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, appellees were exercising a constitutional right. And any classification which penalizes the exercise of that right, unless shown to be necessary to promote a compelling governmental interest, is unconstitutional. Moving from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Interesting phrase there, because that also, when you look at that, you say, well, jurisdiction isn't just from state to state. It can also be from statutory law to common law. That's right. So you also have this mixed in there. This is a nice little piece you could throw in there, just about the moving from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. That could be, part of your status change. Hey, I'm not a U.S. citizen. I'm not a resident of the District of Columbia. So I'm going to move out of that jurisdiction to the de jure republic jurisdiction under common law, under the Constitution for the United States of America, right? Whatever. All right. So anyway, let's continue here. So there is some notes I made because there's a lot of stuff to read in here, and she definitely had it rough. You can read that. It was tough for her, and her going for government assistance was, I think, it probably would have benefited her if she was only doing it temporarily until her kids were a little bit older and she can handle working or finding a man. This was back in the 60s, right? I believe, I forget, but I believe it was in the 60s, but I think there was something in the 40s. I don't know. I forget the years. Oh yeah, 1968. Look at that. Okay. All right, good. So now we're going to go down to here. So she was 19-year-old unwed mother of one child and pregnant with her second child when she changed her residence from Massachusetts to Connecticut to live with her mother. Oh, see, so she's going to go live with the mother, get some help. So we don't know the whole story about what happened. When her mother was no longer able to support her and her infant son because of her pregnancy, she was unable to work or entering a work training program. You see, that I would say that's a good reason to get assistance. Okay. Um, all right. So the majority held, okay, that the waiting period requirement unconstitutional because there's a chilling effect on the right to travel. Chilling effect on the right to travel. That waiting period. The majority also held the provision was a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment because the denial of relief to those residents in the state for less than a year is not based on any permissible purpose, but is solely designed, as Connecticut states quite frankly, to protect its fisc by discouraging entry of those who come needing relief. So they're trying to shoo away people who are coming in saying we need government assistance, right? Okay, which I can see their viewpoint on it, but they don't say that nowadays, do they? All right. Come on in. All right. And we're gonna scroll down a little bit here. Looking for, because it goes into a lot of like the welfare stuff and um, needing relief for being poor. Okay, and yes, we can go and start pointing fingers at government agencies creating these issues, and but I don't want to get into all that right now. Now check this out. For all the great purposes for which the federal government was formed, we are one people with one common country. We're all citizens of the United States and members of the same community must have the right to pass and repass through every part of it without interruption, as freely as in our own states. There you go. We have the right to pass and repass through every part of it without interruption. Officer, stopping me, pulling me over. I'm just traveling. All right. We have no occasion to ascribe the source of this right to travel interstate to a particular constitutional provision. But, and I think I talked about this in United States versus Guest. I don't know if I did a video on that one or not, but it does break it down in here. I'll zoom in a little bit. The right to travel interstate was grounded upon the Privileges and Immunity Clause of Article 4, Section 2. Also see slaughterhouse cases, Twinning versus New Jersey, and this, all right, all these other court cases. All right. Reliance was placed on the Privileges and Immunity Clause of the 14th Amendment. Passengers, a commercial clause approach was employed. Okay. All right. And then this one says where the freedom of Americans to travel outside the country was grounded upon due process clause of the Fifth Amendment. And it says the constitutional right to travel from one state to another occupies a position fundamental to the concept of our federal union. It is a right that has been firmly established and repeatedly recognized. So the right finds no explicit mention in the Constitution. The reason it has been suggested is that a right so elementary was conceived from the beginning to be a necessary commitment of the stronger union the Constitution created. In any event, freedom to travel throughout the United States has long been recognized as a basic right under the Constitution. Okay, so they say that the right is so elementary that it doesn't even need to be mentioned. The right to travel. Do you have a right to travel? Yes. And people will argue this, oh, well, you have a right to travel, but you don't have, it's not a right to drive a car. Well, what do you do when you get in a car? Are you just driving? You could drive a shovel into the ground. It doesn't mean you're going anywhere. All right, maybe except maybe down, but you're not really going anywhere when you're doing that, right? So drive is a job, and the roads are for the public to use. Public access to the roads, public roads, it's public property, right? No dispute about that, because you see all those First Amendment auditors going out there, they're in public, they're on the roads, right? It's public use. So it's free for everyone to use. But when you go make money, off of those roads, then it becomes a privilege. You have to get licensed. Okay, so thus the purpose of deterring the immigration cannot serve as justification for the classification. Okay, for the 1 year wait. Since that purpose is constitutionally impermissible, if a law has no other purpose than to chill the assertion of constitutional rights by penalizing those who choose to exercise them, then it is patently unconstitutional. Now, this is really nice. And that comes from Jackson, United States v. Jackson, okay? But look what it says there, right? If a law has no other purpose than to chill the assertion of constitutional rights by penalizing those who choose to exercise them, then it's patently unconstitutional. Whew, I love that quote. Keep that one in your back pocket, okay? That one comes in handy. All right. Okay, now we're going to go down to, I'm going to scroll down a little bit more. There is some more stuff in here. A lot of good stuff in here. So as always, read this case. There's a lot of stuff in here. They do quote a lot of other cases too. So it's a lot, you know, by the way, if you look at one court case, you'll see that they do point out other court cases. So like the judges and stuff that go on these big appellant cases, right, on these upper circuits, they're reading the case law. They're keeping themselves informed of what's going on as they're going through these trials. Okay, so it's not like they're just kind of sitting around going, oh yeah, I heard that. Oh yeah, I heard that. No, these guys, they're keeping themselves sharp on this stuff, okay? Maybe not the traffic courts. I don't know what those guys do. The small little town courts, that might be a different story. Yeah, there's a lot of other ones. There's another one, but it's not about the right to travel. Okay, the right to travel freely from state to state finds constitutional protection that is quite independent of the 14th Amendment. United States versus Guest again. Okay, as we make clear in Guest, it is a right broadly assertable against private interference as well as governmental action, like the right of association. It is virtually unconditional personal right guaranteed by the Constitution to us all. By contrast, the right of international travel is considered to be no more than an aspect of the liberty protected by the Due Process Clause of the Fifth Amendment. The constitutional right of interstate travel was fully recognized long before the adoption of the 14th Amendment. Okay. For all the great purposes for which the federal government was formed, we are one people with one common country. Yeah, I've read that earlier, but yeah, so you get that. Now we're going to go down a little bit more. Looking for, let's see. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to piece together. So I had to write it down. So I'm checking my notes because I don't remember all the pages. Okay. On the authority of Crandall versus Nevada, those privileges and immunities have been repeatedly to include the right to travel from state to state. Presumably for the reason assigned in Crandall, the state restrictions on travel might interfere with intercourse between federal government and its citizens. Oh, its citizens, the federal government citizens. This kind of objection to state welfare residence requirements would seem necessarily to vanish in the face of congressional authorization for those unaccepted instances where its authority is limited by a constitutional provision binding upon it, as the 14th Amendment is not. Ooh, read that. Okay. The 14th Amendment is not binding. Congress has full power to define the relationship between citizens and the federal government. Then goes through the slaughterhouse cases there, cites all those. Okay, now, here's this. Come down to here a little bit. It is now settled that freedom to travel is an element of the liberty secured by that clause. And that's the Fifth Amendment, by the way. The last possible source of a right to travel is one which does operate against the federal government. The Due Process Clause of the Fifth Amendment. It is now settled that freedom to travel is an element of the liberty secured by that clause. So if someone says, where's the right to travel? It's in the Fifth Amendment. It's on the due process. due process has given us the right to travel. It was so elementary, didn't need to be even mentioned originally, but here we are having to mention it in court cases. All right, because apparently people don't get it. Okay. All right, okay. The right to travel is a part of the liberty of which a citizen cannot be deprived without due process of law under the Fifth Amendment. Freedom of movement across frontiers and inside frontiers as well was a part of our heritage. Absolutely was. Okay. If everyone knows what manifest destiny is, manifest destiny was it was the people, the colonists, believing that they had a destiny to claim the rest of the land that went across however far it went, because they didn't know at the time. They didn't know California would be like the end all, and then you just go up north, and they didn't know about all that land out there. It was all a big mystery, but they knew past the mountains there was more land. So they called it manifest destiny. They were going to create this this world, and just find all this land and just go live on it. And they weren't doing what we do now with all this industry and industrialization to the land, right? They were just putting up homes, and we can get into the other stuff, but that's not what we're talking about. But it was that frontier, and traveling through the frontier it is a part of our heritage. It always was. All right, since this case involves a personal liberty protected by the Bill of Rights, we believe that prior to proposed to legislation curtailing that liberty must be adopted by this court. Since freedom of travel is a constitutional liberty closely related to the rights of free speech and association, we believe that appellants should not be required to assume the burden of demonstrating that Congress could not have written a statute constitutionally prohibiting their travel. You cannot write a statute constitutionally prohibiting someone's travel. All the states have a provision in them asserting your right to travel. It's hidden. It's one little speck inside of each statute of each state, but it's there. Okay. And maybe I'll do a live on Rumble one day or somewhere, and we'll talk about it. I'll show you guys. We'll challenge it, all 50 states. I don't want to do it on this though. All right. It'd just be too long of a video for that. All right. I love this one. We'll have to, if I didn't do this, we'll do this one. United States versus Guest. The court again had occasion to consider the right of interstate travel without specifying the source of that right. The constitutional right to travel from one state to another occupies a position fundamental to the concept of our federal union. It's a right that has been firmly established and repeatedly recognized. The right finds no explicit mention in the Constitution. The reason it has been suggested is that a right so elementary was conceived from the beginning to be necessary concomitant of the stronger union the Constitution created. Right? Well, we read that before, but they're just reciting it again here. Okay. Therefore, I conclude that the right to travel interstate is a fundamental right which for present purposes should be regarded as having its own source in the Due Process Clause of the Fifth Amendment. Can you imagine all the stuff that they went through on this for this court case just because a woman needed to get welfare assistance? You see what they do? It's so crazy. They have to go like that. All right. And then I think that was about it. There was probably some more in here, but I wanted to get some of those real key points in there for you guys. But definitely go check out this case. Make sure you read your way through it. It's a very, very interesting case. And that's about it. All right. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.